Thank you to everyone who's taken the time out of your busy days. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you for joining this RightHear webinar on the 15th of January. And the subject of today's webinar is Beyond Braille, the emerging standard for accessible signage, wayfinding, and spatial orientation. We're going to cover a number of different topics. You'll hear from a number of different speakers, and we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end so that you can get involved in the discussion, ask questions of the various panel members. Here, today's speakers are myself, Darren Gladstone. I'm the US Operations Director here for RightHear. We also have Idan Meir here with us, who is the co-founder and CEO of RightHear. We have Chanel Matos, who is the community manager for RightHear. And we also have Michael Perry, who's the principal at Progressive Companies. And Michael is an expert, a nationally recognized expert in universal design. He helps organizations create inclusive spaces, making those spaces become more accessible, safer environments. He serves on the board of directors of the Global University Design Commission. He works with Fortune 500 companies. He has presented and continues to present with organizations such as the Transportation Research Board, Zero Project in Vienna, San Antonio Inclusion Summit, and so on and so on. And you'll hear from Mike. Hopefully we'll leave more time for Mike than you will for any of the rest of us, because Mike has a lot of interesting insights to give on from all of his work around universal design. So just to give you a quick agenda, first of all, I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes introducing you to RightHear. What is RightHear? Who are we? What do we do? Chanel will talk about really why accessibility matters at a global scale and from her own lived experience. Idan will discuss briefly RightHear's technology. And then Michael will talk about universal design in the built environment. And ultimately, at the end of this webinar session, we hope that we've introduced everyone to a new approach to accessible signage, wayfinding, and spatial orientation within the built environment. So I want to start by sharing just a minute or so of this video. Hopefully the sound comes through.
Schneider Electric. A man walks down a street in downtown Boston. He holds in his left hand the harness handle of his guide dog, a chocolate Labrador Retriever. Rick Blair, Senior Principal Digital Accessibility Program Manager, Schneider Electric.
My name is Rick Blair, and I am blind. I recently started a new role at Schneider Electric as Senior Principal Digital Accessibility Program Manager.
Rick bends over and pets the dog as they stand on a pedestrian island. Then they proceed together down a brick sidewalk.
Despite working remotely, this new role requires me to visit the Boston City Hub quite frequently. Being blind, navigating that space is quite challenging, and often I needed sighted assistance to navigate the various parts of the building and find particular rooms. Now, thanks to the RightHear app, an accessible virtual assistant, I can get audible directions that help me independently navigate the hub, improving my efficiency and productivity.
Rick refers to his smartphone as he navigates out of the elevator of a building and into the Schneider Electric offices.
Continue in this direction 15 feet through the double doors. Please note, there is a doorbell to the right of the double doors at a height of 4 feet. The reception is immediately on your right.
He reaches out towards the doorbell and communication panel to the right of the doors, then walks into the office.
Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Paulette.
How are you? Good. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Text, Paulette Ricardoni, Boston City Hub site leader, Schneider Electric.
I'm Paulette Ricardoni, the site leader at the Boston City Hub.
Rick walks towards a conference room to his left.
Left inside. Good girl.
With the support and funding of the Disability Inclusion and Accessibility Employee Resource Network, we introduced the RightHear Accessible Indoor Orientation System for visually impaired and blind individuals.
Rick sits at an adjustable high desk and opens his backpack.
Alongside the CEO of RightHear and Rick, we ensured complete coverage of the hub.
Paulette tours the office, pointing out coverage elements.
Being part of this initiative to create a more accessible workplace has been incredibly fulfilling, and we aim to inspire other hubs to take on a similar journey.
Text, do's and don'ts with a guide dog. Do's. Let the dog focus on its job.
I'm going to pause the video there. It kind of gives the main thrust there. And that is what we do. Right here, we help make the built environment more accessible. That could be the built environment in office environments, as we saw there, in sports stadiums, and we do that one space at a time. Buildings in Boston, we do it in outdoor built, I guess the outdoor built environment in the sense of public spaces which are controlled. They may be state parks, visitor centers, anywhere where people are arriving. We help make those spaces more accessible for people. Uh, Let me move on. And a big part of the reason why that really is so important for our core audience of people who are blind and visually impaired, but our technology is used by people across across a wide range of categories, is that some of the assumptions around people that are blind and visually impaired just are incorrect. First of all, the assumption that everyone who's blind and visually impaired can read Braille, very far from the truth. 90% plus of people cannot read Braille. 98% plus of people who are blind don't use guide dogs, and over 90% of people with visual impairments don't use white canes. So a lot of the assumptions aren't correct, and therefore we need assistive technology and advances in technology to help bridge those gaps and ensure that the built environment, the places around us, are made as accessible as possible. So in short, RightHear is a talking signage system. We saw it short in the video there briefly. Idan will talk more about the product itself. But we turn signage and make it accessible, make it audio format, make it talk to you so that an individual knows where they are, what's around them, and then how to move on to that space in the same way that a sighted person or somebody who is able to read the signs is able to understand where they are and what's around them. Our solution allows everyone to have that same level of accessibility, that same level of independence, to make life a little bit better for everyone. We work across a wide range of sectors, 2,500 locations globally. We work with Lilly Pharmaceuticals in their head office in Indianapolis, and University of Alaska, Children's National Hospital here in DC, where I am, breweries in Vermont, and state parks in Virginia and California, in Idaho. Basically, anywhere where people can come, we'll help make that more accessible. And with that, I'm going to pass on to Chanel, who's going to talk about really why does it matter? Why do you need a technology like ours, and why is accessibility really important? Chanel.
Thank you, Darren. Hello, everyone. So let's talk a little bit about accessibility. And I am willing to bet that the majority of you right now, when you think about accessibility, you think of some of the basic things like elevators, wheelchair ramps, braille signs. Maybe if you're in an office, you think a little bit on the minutia of making sure that there is things available for people who speak a different language or something along those lines. But it goes so much further than that. For those of you who are actually physically designing buildings or working in buildings, you may know how difficult it is in older buildings to make them accessible. Too many stairs, things are too steep, rails are not in the right places, rails are not at the right angles. A lot of those things go into making a space accessible for everyone. But when it comes to visual impairment, when it comes to traveling in a new space, maybe you're from a different country and everything is shaped differently. I mean, we go to other countries and their toilets act differently than they do here in America, right? So, how do we communicate that to someone without them being able to read a sign? And how does that translate to how you design and structure a building? Well, if you have a building that is designed intentionally with accessible features in mind, then the sign has to do less work. That means, for example, if I'm telling someone that the elevator button is on the wall, I don't have to explain that too much. I can just simply say that the elevator is about 3 feet to your left on the left side, and the button is at uh, about 4 feet from the ground. There's an up and a down button. Simple enough. But when you get these older buildings where things are not made to be accessible and they have these strange dips in the walls and things like that, then now the sign has to accommodate for that information too. That you're going to have to feel for a hole in the wall and try to find that, and it's a lot harder than just running your hand in an open palm across the wall. These are simple things, but they make a huge difference, especially if you have, for example, mobility difficulties in your hand. Perhaps you have a hard time moving your hand in a specific direction. Well, how do you get your hand inside those tiny little holes that they have created for the buttons? These are little things that make big differences. And then we move into security. If you are in a fire situation or a disaster situation in a building and you have no way of moving through this building without sighted assistance or without some sort of verbal direction because you can't read the signs, how do you get out? The reality is we're told, sit still, wait, someone will come get you. Do you know how terrifying that is? As someone who is blind and visually impaired and been stuck sitting in a building waiting for someone to come, quote, rescue me while the building is supposedly burning down around me, that is the most terrifying thing because I'm sitting there wondering, am I going to get home to my daughter today? I don't ever want to think that. That is never a thought that wants to cross my mind. And I don't ever want to wonder if the person coming in after me, are they going to get home to their child because they came in for me? When a solution was available to begin with. They could have simply put something like right here or any talking sign up, and I could have accessed it right there from my phone and walked out the building with everybody else, no assistance required. So then we go beyond that. What about outside? What if I want to go to the park? What if I want to go to the playground with my child? How do I do those things if I am in an open space where I could so easily get lost? And the reality is, as a blind person, and I have done this many, many times where I've gone to a new space with no orientation and I decided to be brave and try to figure it out for myself. And I spent an hour literally walking in circles because I didn't have any idea of what was around me or how to get out of the predicament I put myself in. So when you are creating with intentional universal design, you're creating spaces where I can find landmarks. You're creating spaces where there's signs like right here that are talking to me, that gives me orientation clues and information that I can access the same information and signs that everyone else has access to. I have independence, I have privacy, I have the right to go live my life without being babysat or have my hand held or be feeling like a burden to anybody else because I'm a grown woman allowed to make my own choices and go where I want to go. And these kinds of solutions make that possible for me. So I'm going to pass it back on over to Darren.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chanel, for that. We're going to move on now to Idan, who's going to talk to us about the RightHear technology. Idan.
Yeah, so I'll do it fairly briefly because it's really is not too much about us today, but really about what we're trying to do in the world. So first of all, this is the first time we're doing a webinar for architects. So I'm very excited and proud of our team of bringing that together. So this is very exciting. We have many people here today, and I want to remind us all that we have a chat and a Q&A. So you don't need to wait till the end with your questions. Just start asking them all out in the chat, in the QA, and would love to answer them as we pick them up. And yes, obviously, we're going to keep some time at the end for that as well, verbally, for those who prefer that way. Before, again, one more sentence maybe before the how it works. Just as Chanel spoke about why does that even matter? Why is it there? To me, the easiest explanation here, this is not a feature. To explain what it is by explaining what it's not. So it's not a feature in my mind. It's definitely not a checkbox in my mind. It's a human right, basically. Just like we all go places and see the signs around us to know where we are, to have the confidence going places to know where we are, etc. everyone else should have the exact same right and has the exact same right and should be able to do that as well, confidently, privately, easily. And that's exactly what our talking signs, or what this talking signs category, if you will, is all about. Is about bringing those visual, sometimes tactile, many times Braille signs into another format of audio, making them speak up loud. So not just the blind and visually impaired community could enjoy that, as you currently see on the slide, but other audiences as well. So yes, obviously people with low vision or blind, but also people with cognitive disabilities, they might see the sign, but they cannot necessarily read it. Think about a directory sign, for example, or people who just don't speak the language, right? They might see the sign and can probably read, but they might don't speak the language. So being able to hear what's those cues in your own language, in your own pace, provide that independence, provide that confidence to go out and about, which, as I said before, is a human right. Then we can move on to the next slide. So how we do that magic? Again, I'll try to keep it brief and not too geeky. We can keep the Q&A for those who want on the technicalities of this as much as you like. But to keep it brief, we have three main components of the system. One, it's a free mobile app, completely free, indoors, outdoors, out of space, underwater. There's no nuances there. It's completely free to our users. Again, we believe it's a human right, so it should be free. It's also completely private. We all learned that if it's a free app, then you probably do something with our data. No, we don't. There is no sign into the app. We're not asking your name, your email, your Facebook. We're not asking any of those. Just like your calculator. You download, it's working. No signing process needed. Okay. The app basically is the user interface. That's what gives our users the audio descriptions of the environment. As I said, in 35 different languages, answers to questions like, where am I? What is here? What's around me? And much, much more. The app does that thanks to the second component, which is actually markers and beacons. Markers are basically, think of it as a smart QR code, or a QR code on steroids, as I like to call it many times. It's our proprietary technology. We have 2 patents that we've written on this. And that's basically, once the camera detects that from a very far distance and very hard angles, the app basically gives our users information about what is that in that point of interest, how far is it, and information of that environment. The other component is the beacons. I'm currently holding one. Beacons are basically Bluetooth devices in the size of a finger. We place them just like we place the markers at the facility. There's no integrations whatsoever with the facility. We don't need the Wi-Fi there, if exists at all, or cellular connection, or internet, or electricity, or anything like that. It's complete standalone. Usually the IT folks love that as well. It's also very secured from that standpoint. These are 2 positioning technologies that we're using in order to provide the audio descriptions to our users. Those are the signs, if you will. The last component is our admin dashboard. It's a cloud portal, which allows us and the facility to log in and control, edit, and basically manage all the audio descriptions in the fleet, in the facility. So, for example, you are in the main entrance to Schneider Electric, as we've seen in the video earlier, or whatever that is. We can change the open hours there or anything like that. It's all text that turn into speech at the user device. So from that standpoint, it can easily reprogram and change. And it could also easily translate, again, in our case, 35 different languages. I hope that was brief enough about the technology. All of that, again, is that we've tried to build something very simple and very dynamic to provide great benefits in many different use cases. I guess this is my last slide for my part. The overall idea here is obviously to improve accessibility for everyone, not just for the blind, visually impaired, if you will. We're in our architect's webinar. We're all familiar with the curb cut effect. It's maybe the hidden curb cut effect. When we do that for the blind and visually impaired, we're actually helping many, many others. It provides orientation, not navigation. That's worth a 30-second explanation. If navigation is about taking us from point A to point B, like take me to Darren's office, turn right, turn left, turn right, turn left, you've arrived, kind of like what Waze is doing for us when we drive. So that's not what RightHear is doing. That's not what talking signs in general are doing. What those doing are giving us cues about where we are, what is there, what's around us. That's not makes it better or worse. It's just different. It's just like the need of signage in parallel to the need of navigating. Obviously, those signs help us navigate to where we want to go. As we sometimes say, in order to find your way, you first need to know where you are. 35 different languages. We mentioned that easily adaptable, updatable content. Again, we've seen that in many projects when there's a renovation in the building, it's very easy. You don't need to change the beacon or the markers. They can stay there. You just change their content. That makes the fleet much more dynamic, much more flexible. Obviously, with a regular sign, you need to take it off, redesign it, and put it on. In our case, while it's on, you can just change the content as much as you like. And yes, as I said, it works fully offline. To me, that means that emergency proof. Unfortunately, we've seen emergency situations also in the past year. Being able to know where the exit is in case of emergency without relying on the internet or anything else is part of the benefits of that. So including that in the thinking and in the design process, I think is important. Darren, I think my next slide is a quick video. Not sure if you want to share that, but I'm handing it over to you.
I think we'll skip over the video,
Okay.
and we'll go straight to Michael. So handing over to Michael, who's going to talk about universal design in the built environment.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Just want to double check.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I'm going to introduce the concept of universal design and really the question of who are we designing for. I'm an architect. I'm licensed in like 20 states. I do projects all over the world. So I've kind of seen, what other countries are really doing. There are some countries that are really, really advanced in terms of their accessibility requirements and others that are not. So we'll touch on that at the end of the presentation, but I'm gonna kind of zip through this and just give you a feel for and I do the same presentation at universities around the country. The first thing, I mean, this is the reality of who we're designing for. There's a lot of faces, but we don't know these people. We don't know what their abilities are or their disabilities. Many times when people apply for a job, they don't have to disclose they have a disability. Next. So then we start to think about really about the audience and their experiences. I really like some of the examples that Chanel gave in terms of independence and safety and wondering about if she could make it home to see her daughter, because universal design is all those things. In terms of these buckets, it's really about we hear a lot about mobility, and if you're familiar with ADA here in the States, that's a lot about mobility. But there's also sensory, and I've always said that sensory access is just as important as physical access. Which is our basis. That's what we use for our universal design basis. But there's lived experiences, there's well-being, there's different physical sizes, and of course there's neurodiversity. When I started doing this probably 10 years ago, not too many questions came up about, well, are there any universal design strategies for the neurodiverse population? And there really, really wasn't. So we've taken that quite a bit further in terms of the challenges that individuals have who are considered neurodiverse. And remember, there's really no neuronormal. We're all different from each other. We learn different. We act different. We see things differently. Next. I wanted to include this because I thought this was really interesting. It was a Fortune 100 company we did a survey for, and they surveyed all of their employees across the globe. And two of the questions we asked, one of them was, do you associate with having a physical disability? And the other was, do you associate with being neurodiverse? And it was kind of interesting that 22% employees associated with having a physical disability, which is pretty much the norm globally of what we see. But the 40% was really, really kind of eye-opening. And the client was really caught off guard by this, not realizing that 40% of their workforce considered themselves neurodiverse some way, somehow. And I think what that did, at least in this with this project and this client, it led us to create standards for them that implemented many, many more strategies from a universal design perspective that positively impacted the neurodiverse population. And I think it's important to understand that, people with disabilities really worry about their daily experience and they want meaningful inclusion. I mean, they worry about, can they find a parking space? Can they get into the building? Is it going to be safe? Is there a chair at the conference table that they can find and get into? Can they use the restroom? It's all of these different experiences that really become a challenge. Next. So, at some time or another, we're all going to experience some change, whether that's a temporary disability where, I play softball and I damage my knee, or I fall down the stairs, or I just get older. So, this is a real thing. It impacts all of us at some point in our life. Next. This is just some stats. 1.3 billion people across the world have some form of disability. 80% of those disabilities really are acquired between your working ages. And that represents 8 trillion in spending with family and friends. And I thought this was kind of interesting that there's more clothing lines for dogs than there are for disabled people. Next. There it is. So really, what is it? There's lots of different definitions. If I was to ask each of you to send in a definition, it would all be a little bit different. But kind of the way I see it, it's really about a process. It's about empowering and enabling a diverse population by again removing not only physical but social barriers, and creating really, really welcoming environments. But you need to look at things a little bit differently. I know as an architect, none of this was really discussed when I was going to school. But today you need to look at things a little bit differently. And I'm going to show you some images that kind of help explain how to look at things a little bit differently. Next. So UD is really, we find our clients really like to be able to tell a unique story, and that's really about valuing everybody. Think about everybody as part of the human experience, and UD identifies a concept and strategies that really better support the world that we live in. Next. Next. There you go. Thanks. Again, here in the States, ADA, it's a wonderful thing. It was tremendous legislation. But today, it's kind of the floor, and it's really, really no longer enough. I was at a conference when Betty Siegel spoke, and I thought this was really interesting. She said to expect, embrace, plan, and design for disability as part of being human. So there are 7 principles of universal design. I won't go into all of these. You've probably seen these. Obviously, you can Google them. But this was originally came out of the University of, I think it was North Carolina State, NC State, with Ron Mace. Ron was an architect there, and it was the Center for Universal Design. And so they really kind of created these 7 principles. And so everything we do, everything we think about going forward is really ties back to these 7 principles. And you can see the next one is really, really important. It's about equitable use. It's about allowing people to have choices. And then I also like to point out number 5, universal design is a lot about safety. So I think about, again, some of the examples that Chanel gave. Safety is really, really important, just not for somebody who has a disability, but for all of us, because as humans, we make mistakes. Next. This is just I decided to include this because I thought it was, from a kind of a how do you think about the experience of somebody? So we conducted a some work with an international airport, and they wanted to become more inclusive. And so what we did was we just thought about, if you think about the users or the traveler's journey. So we broke the building apart and we thought, really what happens with outside the building and how people enter a building. And that included, transit stops and their parking and their drop off and wayfinding of the site. And then once inside, they're going to have to interact with baggage services and restrooms and airline ticket kiosks and even the car rental counters. And then security is always really, really, when you talk about airports and disabilities, security is always a flashpoint. There's credential checks, there's loading of luggage, there's the scanning process. And then obviously when waiting in departures or arrivals, they're going to be using lounges and restrooms, refreshment areas, which are tenant spaces, the concourse, the inside ramps to get down, and they call it the PBB, the passenger boarding bridge. It's kind of interesting. Once somebody gets on the passenger boarding bridge, they are under the airline's control versus the airport's control. So again, just a simple way to kind of think about how people interact with space. It's just not going to an airport, but it's all these places that people have to experience. Next. So here's an example, some of the pictures. I think one thing to keep in mind is that 80% of accidents in buildings and your home happen on stairs. So, that's by far the largest. Slips and falls, stairs. So the stair at the left was actually at the same airport. And by applying some simple visual cue strategies that we promote in UD all the time, you can see how visually it makes it so much easier to maneuver that stair and a safer situation. When I showed the airport this picture, they said, "Oh my God, Mike, you wouldn't believe how many people slip on that stair." And you can imagine it. You don't even have to have a disability. Universal design is about helping everyone. This is a mom or dad with a couple pieces of baggage and two toddlers. Or this is Joe who's in a hurry and is on his phone, not paying attention. And so universal design is a lot about visual and tactile cues. Next. This is a project on the left. This is what we see typically at college campuses. Again, it's the concrete stairs are just poured because that's just the way it's done, right? The architect or the civil engineer, the landscape architect kind of show it on their plans. And the contractors, yeah, we pour these things all the time, and they go out and pour them. And then, the client is like, oh my gosh, we have people falling on these stairs because they can't see that next step. Well, there's a couple of strategies off to the right. On the lower right is, conical domes and highlighting the nosing for somebody who has a visual impairment. But also on that railing, if you notice that rivet, I kind of took a picture and enlarged it. But that rivet is a tactile cue. And so that means, Mike, if I'm in a hurry and I'm on my phone and I reach out to the hand railing and I feel that little bump, that alerts me that something is coming up. That's all it is a simple tactile cue. We have a client, actually, Merck. We've been doing their UD work for 8 years now. And on every stair, they put these tactile cues, every stair around globally. Next. This we're seeing more and more on campuses. We're working with Notre Dame, and they have a number of students who are weight cane users. And up until a point, they were using the edge of the concrete as the guide or specific rocks that were placed strategically, where the facilities group would place specific rocks. But in the end, this is a more I think, appropriate solution, providing guide strips. The other thing it does is it keeps people who don't have visual impairments, they stay off them. So they kind of leave the lane clear for those who need it. Next. So again, stairs, stairs, stairs. The stair on the left is at a country club. The interior designer is probably looking at a swath of it and said, "Oh, this would be great." But the country club has had two or three people fall on that stair. They have a banquet room up above where they rent out weddings, and people at weddings, they're drinking, they're in high heels, they're in a hurry, and they miss that next tread. And the stair at the center, this is at a corporate headquarters in New Jersey where the client has actually put up a sign. They've had so many people trip. As architects, we love things that are simple and express the materials and monolithic. But this is all kind of this is a granite stair. It's not polished. So that's a little better. But again, there's no designation of landings or nosings. And the stair on the right is kind of interesting. Beautiful materials. It's polished granite, glass, stainless steel. But there's a lot of visual clutter in this. I was on this stair and I even hesitated making that first step because your senses are telling you be careful because it's picking up all these lines and reflections. Next. So, I think the ramp is really and I said here, deceptively simple concept. This is at the Mary Free Bed YMCA. It's about 120,000 square foot building, 2 levels. But we decided to use a main ramp and eliminate any stair, any step, any threshold in the entire building because of safety. So what happens is this ramp is 8 feet wide. Everybody takes the same path to travel. So if my friend Pat Besta in a wheelchair and I meet there, we go down the ramp together to the exercise equipment. And you can notice on the picture on the right where we show the different colors, that's again visual cue for where those flat spots are in that ramp. Many times, in fact, in the airport I worked at, the internal ramps from the gate down to the baggage claim, they're all one color of terrazzo, and people stumble on that because they're pulling their bag, they're in a hurry, they're on the phone, and they don't see that flat spot coming up. So again, it's really, really important to create some visual cues when changes occur on a walking surface. Next. So again, this is just a picture of the ramp. It kind of dominates the building. It was very intentional to be wayfinding element. So, we get a lot of seniors in this space who are exercising, and it just provides a cue to them. And oh yeah, that's where I came into the building. So it's meant to be a little bit playful, but at the same time, as you notice, it's really the only bright color object surrounded with lots of off-whites and grays. This is that ramp in the airport I talked about. There's a couple of flat spots in this ramp, but they're really kind of hard to pick up. And this is where their people are tripping. So we created some UD standards for this airport, and they just finished another section of the airport, and their internal ramps are now 2 colors. So again, they're taking those standards forward with anything they change in this airport. So this is called a transfer station. And this allows people who want to enter the pool, they can do it. The chair on the top of the picture, that's required by code, but it's never used. People would rather get in and out of the pool themselves. So a transfer station, they pull up a wheelchair or their walker, or they with the cane, They sit down on this and then they transfer down the different levels where they're comfortable, and they get into the pool, they exercise, and they transfers back up and they can leave. Because, think about it. Just say I'll use myself. I've been, independent my whole life, and all of a sudden I have knee surgery, and I don't want to ask a 16-year-old lifeguard to help me get into the pool. So I would rather maintain my independence and get into the pool and out of the pool myself. The other thing this picture represents is the low gutter. So it's easy to get in and out. There's not a bulkhead somebody needs to climb over. It's easy to sit on the edge. And the lane lines, if you notice, are bright at the end of the lanes. And that's because most accidents in pools happen when novice swimmers hit the wall of the pool because they're not used to a pool environment. So that bright, it's actually an orange, but that bright orange, it provides a visual cue for people to realize that the wall is coming up, and you need to stop swimming. Next. Sensory access is just as important. We've done some centers for neurodiversity. One was where they only employed adults who were neurodiverse. But what we found out through our research was that 75% of the neurodivergent population considers sound and acoustics to be the most important consideration. And then harsh lighting is really the second most important design consideration. And this picture just kind of represents what some on the neurodiverse spectrum could feel in a crowded train station. It's sensory overload. Next. This isn't just another quick example of clutter. Again, I think the architect and lighting designer thought they were doing the right thing, and it's a beautiful space, but there's a lot of reflection going on here that can cause a distortion of space. Next. I love this picture because, again, I think the architect tried to capture and use natural light, but it's not controlled. And when I stepped into this space, I even hesitated again, almost like that same thing I did on that stair, where, is the floor moving? Is there a step there? What's really happening? So again, low reflective finishes are a UD strategy, controlling the natural light, contrast between the columns and the floor, and not having bright to dark spaces so quickly. Next. So I'll ask a quick question here. What if you wanted a bottle of water and you were in a wheelchair, or you were short stature, or you just didn't have the reach range? And what you can see is the only place the water is on the top shelf. And a simple UD strategy is to take product and organize it vertically instead of horizontally. I was at this project, and there was a little lady, and she had her hairnet on and a cart, and was putting product in. And I said to her, I said, how come you stack the product like this? And she goes, well, that's just the way we've always done it. And so once the client heard that, the client changed their protocols with that vendor, saying you need to stack everything in a vertical manner. So it should be water on every shelf, Mountain Dew on every shelf, yogurt on every shelf. And that's a no-cost strategy. That's just a change in mindset. Next. Furniture's, again, furniture choices. This is Brooke and Christine at the left. Christine broke her ankle, temporary disability. But you can see how those high top tables kind of puts Christine at a disadvantage. She's looking right at this 90-degree angle, versus on the right, which is just a more flexible and promoting eye-to-eye contact. Next. This is Pat Besta, friend I mentioned. He and I go to the Y a lot. And this is a piece of accessible equipment. If you see that yellow handle on the bottom right. So when Pat works out, he pulls the handle up, the chair swivels out of the way, he rolls in, bench presses, he leaves, I pull the handle up, swing the bench back in, and I use it. So again, it's not isolating Pat. It's not making Pat feel different. Pat and I use the same accessible equipment. Next. Picture on the left was at an airport I was at. Again, I think from the architectural standpoint, this was really a nice clean counter and plan view. People could stop, plug in their phones, their laptops. But what happened was so many people ran into this corner that the airport, um, you know, put some alerts up and said, be careful. And the same thing on the right. Somebody complained they needed a shelf in the bathroom. The facilities group put one up, but as soon as you walk in the door, this is what you see. So it's a protruding object. So again, they're good ideas, but they're not thinking about them in terms of safety and does it work? Next. Soccer match. This is being viewed by somebody who can't distinguish between reds and greens. So it's kind of like other than the white shorts, everybody's on the same team. So again, we think about uh, color and the universal design of color. And the Rubik's cubes in the upper right is that same example of being viewed by somebody. So everything kind of browns out. And so it's important to think about that. And what we found is most people can see blues and yellows. Again, you can't solve for everyone, but again, the universal design of color is an important concept. Next. Obviously, the phone booth on the left, we're seeing less and less of those because they're just not accessible. Again, two of our major clients have said to their furniture providers, we're not doing them anymore. The one on the right is interesting. We love glass, we love transparency, but I remember a story when Apple, I think it was I think they're in San Mateo, when they opened 7 years ago, they had 17 people run into glass walls the first day. So we love glass, but if we look at the next slide, it's important to put some visual cues on glass. Our client on the right decides to brand it. The client on the left is a library, and the dots are at a lower level for kids and a higher level for adults. Trip hazards on the right, cable cubbies on the table, but nobody can reach them. Next. Color, it's important to have contrasting colors. We did this at the Y so that people would stay in their lanes and feel safe. It's almost like an airport runway, or when you drive on a road, it's kind of those lines to kind of keep people in their lanes. Next. A lot of non-reflective finishes, clear signage, contrast, even the chairs contrast with the floor, low desk, high desk. Next. So a lot of we've shown there can be performance improvements in these 5 areas by implementing universal design. Next. So this isn't just happening in the USA. It's just not happening in Israel. It's happening all over the world. Again, I've worked in 29 or 30 different countries on UD projects. Some are more advanced, like Ireland. Others are not, like India, as an example. But again, it's just not happening in one country. It's really a kind of a global movement. Next. So in the end, it's really about, this kid on the left in the wheelchair says to the janitor, can you please shovel the ramp? And the janitor says, yeah, but all these other kids are waiting to get in. When I get through shoveling them off, then I'll clear the ramp. And the kid says, yeah, but if you just did the ramp, we can all get in. Next. And I think this is the last slide. So this is kind of, I think, an important concept. So this is Carson. Carson was born with spina bifida, mom and dad, and Cece. And when they first came to the Y, they were really nervous. And a year later, I asked Emily, I said, tell me about universal design. And she thought for a moment. She said, UD allows me to watch my son instead of help my son. So she said, before I'd have to open the door, find a parking space, get him to the elevator, make sure he could get into the locker room. Now Carson is in the building, down the ramp, on the basketball floor before his mom ever gets into the building. So I think that was the end of what I have. Right? Darren? Yep.
Yeah, I think it is. And thank you so much, Mike, for sharing all of those insights and examples, because I think the important thing always is we can talk about universal design and accessibility in theoretical terms, but the reality is it only makes a difference when it comes to fruition. when we can take those approaches, those theoretical approaches, and bring them into real life situations, which make people's lives better, make spaces more accessible, make
Yeah.
people able to have more independent experiences, whether that's in gymnasiums, sports stadiums, swimming pools, airports, office spaces, all of the places that you give examples to, and the places we work in. It's really about making people's lives a little bit better. So I want to thank you for sharing all of that. Um, we've got 10 minutes left for questions, and I know there's a couple that have been written here. There's one guy would like to know, Mike, whether you believe that right here would make for a good LEED claim or credit, a lead claim or credit.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad that question came up. I was going to add this. So I don't know, maybe it was a year ago or so. I said, you know what, I want to hear more about this RightHear. I want to understand it. So I ordered some beacons and I put them up in our office building. And I had a bunch of people download the app and we did a research project on it. And if you want to read about it, it's on my LinkedIn account. But I would say yes. I think it's really, really important how you tee it up. Um, but it is clearly a human advantage in one respect. I think, and it was really easy to use, and I kind of programmed it myself, and but yeah, we still have it up in our office building, and when I bring clients through it, they'll say, "What's that little box that there?" I say, "Oh, that's right here, beacon in here. Let me show you how it works." And so I think it would apply.
Great, thank you for that. I also know that Carol had asked to see examples of how the beacons and markers might look in space. So, Idan, uh,
Sure.
if I stop sharing, you want to share?
Yeah. I'd love that. Thank you, Carl, and thank
We've
you.
got 5 minutes left, Idan.
Sure. I'll keep it quick. So you can see my screen right now. The
Yes.
virtual roles. This is in an airport. Uh, this is a marker that they put there, the retrofit to the current signs. We've seen projects where it's part of the design of the sign, right? So it depends on where you are with the project, but it could definitely be as a retrofit, as a sticker that you put on a sign that is already exists. Again, in this case, it's this airport. This sign, just to maybe demonstrate that experience with the markers, which, by the way, we came up with these markers to the market just in the past year. So Mike, it's even much easier nowadays to
Yeah,
set it
yeah.
up than the beacons, but they all both work together. So here's a quick 15 seconds illustration of that. As you start look around, in this case is this case the baggage reclaim.
Baggage recheck.
I hope the sound went through as well, but there's a little marker over here. I hope you've been able to hear that. As soon as it's pick it up, it also gives us the distance to there, right? In this case, it's 15.9 feet. The other thing I wanted to share is the beacon. So here's a beacon. In this case, it's a baggage claim area. So here's a beacon in the top. Beacons are basically allowing our users to hear that they're in an area where there are also markers. So it kind of notified them when the users can be completely passive. The phone could be in their pocket, if you will. It's kind of, hey, you're in an area where you can start look around and learn even more. So it's not just telling you information about you're in the baggage claim, but it also invites you to look around for more specific points of interest there. Yeah, that was like for you, Carol. Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you, Dan. We've only got a couple of minutes left. Are there any other questions? Any last minute questions? We're going to share the presentation with everyone. People should feel free to reach out to Mike. He's active on LinkedIn, or reach out to us here at RightHear if you have additional questions, if you may be interested in understanding how we deploy, how it might suit a particular project, and we can send you examples and product demo, physical product demo that Idan is beautifully modeling there, that way around. We can send that out to you. Just let us know. You'll find us on all social channels, LinkedIn, Facebook.
Yep. And the keyword here is simplicity. As we said before, right? It's not about checking a box. It's not about rocket science as well. It's not a feature. To me, again, as I said, it's a human right, and therefore it has to be super simple, no-brainer for anyone involved, from IT to finance to everything in the middle. Yeah. Thank you, Darren, for bringing it up. Mike, thank you for joining us today and sharing. I feel like I've learned a few things. You've shared some. You share a few pictures there that I was like, hold on, isn't that required under the ADA? Is that like up to you to decide? I mean, I can tell you from what we know in other places, it's a requirement for the strips on the stairs. That's to me, oh my God, it has to be there. It is scary without it. To me as a sighted person as well, in some cases, as well with the glasses. So I feel like I want to thank you and thank you for looking into this and advocating for universal design so many years. It's been a real pleasure having you today. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Chanel, for sharing your own experience. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All
Bye-bye,
right, thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Yep,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.